Welcome. I am Dr. Rima Bonario, and this is Teacher Talk Special Edition, just an abbreviated version of my usual hour-long conversations with my beautiful, wonderful, and soul-connected teachers that I love to bring to my students. And so I'm fond of saying that every coach needs a coach, every teacher needs a teacher, and it's my pleasure to share my teachers with my students. And so today I'm talking with the beautiful and brilliant Allison Conte. She is the founder of Sophia Leadership, as well as an instructor for leadership, corporate leadership, an instructor for corporate learning at Harvard University. I want to get that right because that's impressive. And she is also an ordained and practicing priestess. So I love that combination of her bringing all of her soul wisdom and her corporate business acumen into the world today. And that's one of the reasons she is one of my beloved teachers. So welcome, Allison. Thank you for agreeing to be here and to share about Sophia Leadership today.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Rima. What a beautiful introduction. So great to be with you.
Oh, it's always my pleasure to be in your space. And so I think let's start a little bit with a little bit of background. So just to give people an idea of how we connected and how I ended up becoming a raving fan of yours. So I met Allison, gosh, way back when, I couldn't even remember the year really, when we were both involved in learning the spiritual intelligence model that Cindy Wigglesworth put together. And we connected a little bit there. And then I got to know her a little better through some of the work that I attended where she was facilitating at the Boulder Integral Center in downtown Boulder, which was also wonderful.
I forgot about that. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, we did some work with Alethea there together, and then also at the Lotus Lounge or the Lotus Retreat, you came and gave a panel talk. And this was the moment really where I remembered sort of getting you at another level, where I think it was the beginning of where you were sharing some of your more shamanistic and mystical studies that you've been doing. And that was so profound for me as you shared going into these more mystical and esoteric and even indigenous wisdom that's available to us. So fast forward several months and I was in the throes of that journey myself and really seeking to connect to my lineage, and you popped into my mind as somebody that I could connect with to ask about your path and what you'd been doing and how you could direct me in some places that would be interesting. And from there, we just sort of started staying really connected, and you shared what was happening with Sophia Leadership. And I was so moved by your vision and by this incredible body of work that when you said you were going to do a pilot retreat, I was all in. And I said, I'm here to support you in whatever way you need. I will help with marketing support. I will help with you create videos. I'll fly out to Boulder. I mean, I just felt compelled really to support you in bringing this forth. And as just really a gift from my soul, a calling and part of my soul mission. And then I got to attend the retreat and was so deeply and richly blessed by the work. It really fundamentally changed my life. And I went on from there to study even more deeply with you and some of our other teachers around how to embody my feminine magic or my feminine presence in a way that I'd never really been able to do in my life before, not even being aware that I had this issue of showing up in much more masculine ways and how that was actually leading me very quickly towards burnout and illness. And so you saved me in the nick of time, and so I'm delighted to share about this with you for my students, especially because I know you have a program coming up, and really excited to hear about that.
Yeah, thank you.
So that's a little bit of background, and I just wanted to start off by asking you what for you was that inspiration that helped you bring forward this teaching?
It's kind of a long story, so I won't tell the whole thing here, but I had been working as a consultant and as an organizational development consultant and leadership advisor around whole systems change for organizations, culture change, and that type of thing. And I found myself after some years of that actually in burnout and in adrenal fatigue. My body basically shut down and I couldn't work for 2 years. And prior to that, some of my colleagues and friends from the integral movement had been saying things like, oh, Allison, you carry a lot of divine feminine energy, which I loved hearing, but I really didn't know what that meant at the time. And then, and then I had a series of very magical and mystical experiences with the sacred feminine herself. And she really just kind of picked me up and took me on a ride for a number of years. That whole 2-year period when I couldn't write, when I couldn't work, I was doing a lot of the inner journey with her. And so it became I became very aware of how, as you said, I had been running a lot of masculine energy through my system and not even aware of the detrimental effects of that until I got so sick. And I like to think about, sometimes I like to think about energy, feminine energy and masculine energy as sort of fuel for the system. And when you have a feminine essence and a woman's body combined, it can be really detrimental to run too much masculine energy through it for a long period of time. It's kind of like running diesel fuel through a regular engine. You know, it's not sustainable. It doesn't work for over time. And I learned that the hard way. And then in my inner journey with the goddess, she pointed me to a better way and really taught me sort of from the inside out. I didn't do, a lot of external study. It was just my own inner journey that led me to this place.
And so how have you come to see that connecting into our feminine energy for women, in addition to sort of avoiding burnout, of course, we want to not get sick and not be tired and crunchy all the time. And then on the positive end of the spectrum, what is it about showing up in our feminine energy, especially as leaders, that is needed right now? What's so important about leading in this way?
Yeah. Well, I think women, especially women leaders, if we've had any success at all in the workplace, we have already got it down how to lead with masculine qualities. And when we bring the feminine and bring that together and integrate those two, magic happens. Magic happens. So one of the things that I think that we are most called to do is to bring a quality of wisdom that comes through the heart. Quality of wisdom that comes directly from love and from the source of love, which is really the source of who we are. And that's our deepest, most profound gift that we have to bring in leadership.
It's kind of a radical notion, isn't it? That we could lead from love in our workplaces. Most of the time I would think, certainly in my life, I could see a place for that perhaps in my family life, but the world tends to be organized not around the principle of love when it comes to business and leading and government. And so as you've leaned into that, running your life and your work and your consultancy in that way, how has that changed how you show up?
Well, lots of things. Suffering and pain and adversity. What's that word?
Adversity.
Adversity. I'm obviously not in touch with it right now. I'm in touch with joy. Those things crack the heart open to allow more compassion and love to flow through. I've also learned a whole lot. I got taken on a ride to learn a whole lot about trust and receptivity, really leaning into my trust in life and my trust in the divine to orchestrate things just like even better than I could orchestrate them for myself.
Yeah, it occurs to me, one of the things that I adore about this technology, if you want to call it that, of being in our feminine essence, is that it's really very different from sort of that new agey spiritual bypass, like just manage your mood thing. Because while we often experience or can get deeply connected to our sense of joy, our pleasure, our excitement, and our juiciness, there's the path to that, as you describe, is not by ignoring the more difficult emotional states, or by denying the destruction and the devastation that we might see in the world or personally experience in our lives.
Mm. Yeah,
So I
thank you.
wonder.
I just wrote a little piece about that the other day, about how, my business partner, Angie, and I, we have so much fun working together, and we get lit up and delighted and super juicy and creative together. And, but when we were talking about that, we realized, well, that we have access to that not because we've skipped over the pain of the world or the suffering of the world, but because we actually dove straight into it. And we are willing to feel all of that, and to allow all of that energy to move through us. And being willing to do that makes the positive more available too. So you get more joy available, more juiciness, more flow available when you're willing to hold all of that.
Well, I think it was maybe Brene Brown who said that super succinctly when she said, you can't selectively numb, and
Right.
when we try to close off part of our feeling nature, we end up closing off our potential for all of that feeling nature, all the good as well as the challenging. So when you start working with women to bring this form of feminine leadership into their lives and into their workplaces, what do you notice are some of the places, and maybe even in your own life, where you met some either internal resistance or resistance from the people in your environment? What are some of the challenges that women face?
Oh, I mean, one of the biggest challenges is just the culture of overwork, the culture of drive, 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 go, 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 produce, produce, produce. That's what I call a hyper masculine uh, culture, way of being. And it's really, really insidious, and especially in corporate America. And, and the feminine brings the gifts of rest and reflection and renewal. And we need those in order to keep going and to be sustainable, and to be creative. You can't be creative when you're like, you know, driving so hard,
Right. The
right?
difference between, it's sort of like the difference between being busy or birthing.
Yeah, yeah. And birthing requires some time for gestation, you know.
Yeah.
So
Rest
that's one.
between contractions, right?
So that's one challenge, and that's one challenge that we're gonna work on in this course. And then the other one that we're going to work on in this course is a lot of times, because of the dominant culture, because of the dominant masculine culture, and the heavy emphasis on irrational thinking, which is, we need that. But there's a devaluing of intuitive knowing. And so a lot of times, women and men, when we lose access to the feminine inside of us, we lose access to our intuitive knowing and our wisdom that comes through intuitive guidance. And so that's such an important thing that I always work on with women, how to get that. And I had to do that with myself, how to reconnect, to actually plug back into that source of wisdom, that intuitive source.
Yeah. And I want to just offer too that I work, most of my clientele is not in the corporate life. It's more in the nonprofit world, or even in spiritual communities who are leaders, ministers, coaches, healers. A lot of those folks I work with. And I can tell you that culture of go, 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 produce, produce, produce is also present in those places as well. It would maybe be shocking to learn how many churches run there. Well, you're married to a minister, so maybe you.
I know firsthand what my husband is a minister, and he is working harder than he ever has now with
Yeah.
this COVID crisis going on.
And so that whole piece around how do we, whatever is our life's work, even if our life's work is our family life, running a family, which is plenty of work, that we can still fall into that trap of only valuing the aspects of our time and that feels productive. And so when we were talking earlier, and you and I've known each other for a long time, one of the things that's changed for both of us as a result of doing this work is having more time for ourselves and our own practice, and recognizing that as an really like a precursor or foundational step to actually being able to be productive. So will you speak a little bit about how that's shown up for you?
Mm. Well, one of the primary aspects of the feminine is beingness, just being. And on the opposite pole from that is doing, so we have had so much of the masculine value for doing, that we have to reclaim the value of being. And being requires space and time and a lot of even silence. It requires not doing. Um, and when we can cultivate a practice of beingness, then we bring a certain kind of quality of presence and an inner stillness, an inner equanimity, an inner radiance that actually allows us to get more done when we are getting things done with less effort.
Yeah.
So we can accomplish more and do less. It's amazing. It's kind of like magic.
And it feels so much better in
Mhm.
our systems, to work that way. I
Yeah.
would say that that's in fact been my exact experience as well.
Yeah.
So will you be sharing with people in your course about how they can develop these skill sets and learn this form of feminine magic, if you will, so that they don't have to
Yeah.
work so hard to create, but can do more in less time and stay really alive and vibrant and radiant while they're doing it?
Yes, that's the goal. That's the goal. It's a 3-part masterclass for women change makers. So I'm also my Harvard teaching is the only place where I'm still working in corporate. And in Sophia Leadership, our audience is women change makers. So
Nice.
that's women like me who are executive coaches and consultants, and also social entrepreneurs and impact leaders of nonprofits and that sort of thing. So for those women, we're going to be doing this 3-part masterclass. That's just it's really a dipping the toe in sort of an introduction to feminine leadership. And we'll be talking about, what does feminine leadership even mean? Why is it needed in the world? I've got a lot of research around women's leadership that I'll bring forward. I'll bring forward the Sophia Leadership model, which is a beautiful map to help us orient in this territory. And we'll be talking about intuition. We'll be talking about how to give and create from overflow so we don't get depleted. And we will be learning some new practices together.
Well, I'm super excited. I can't wait for it. And thank you so much for coming and sharing about it today. And those of you that are watching, I highly encourage you to connect to this work. It's being offered at an amazing, amazing affordable price of $36 for this incredible 3-part masterclass, which is a pizza and a 6-pack. So I invite you to say yes and to come and learn more about how you can unleash this beautiful, potent energy that exists in you, that is your birthright, so that you can be even more effective as a change maker on the planet. We need you.
Thanks, Rima.
Mhm.
The course is called Essential Feminine Leadership. And I don't know, I guess we'll figure out how we're going to let people know how to register for that.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Allison.
Thanks, Rima.